Alright, I'm going to new mobile, la new mobile, called Dunga Midubas, Dunga the Tower, Dunga Yagi, Yuzo, the new mobile. The new mobile nane so the Tinzi Maripalatini Gigores. Cesanda, Nanzugi, Kori Dunga la Tavala, Tinzi Maripa the Pongo Ores. Cesanda, Tinzi Maripa Pongwala, Niembo Karekom the Pongorilane, Tomba to be share a combalet in the Pongores. Sadine Zada Tomba to be share a combalet Pombaina, Tomba said the Kaneshe, not Tomba said it, the Nedin said that, and kissing. Dingo Church, didn't know you to be share a combalatine, Comcures, Deana, Jashu Sim you Quine Lange, and Jashu Sim Simbio Quine, and Tomba in the share of Comje, Dom, Jashu Sim, Damboyene, Solam top, Dene, and the Tomba in the Bishila soon to troop Dene, Jolam top, Dene Tombanyo, Topi, Ludi, Combalet, Dene, and that wants some more to the Tessin Tolam Parsimolam set the top, and Digi, and Dene. Teacher teaching on Namdrolam told you, dancing Gunda Savona Java Pangbares. And then that's Dushin Gombala dinner, Gomblam said Tovala dinner, Satumba, Sakeva told you, and then your moba, Pasha, Savona Java Pangbares, and Dushin, Zuki, Tomba to Locombala dinner, Jessim Yukuni, Simbi Tony, don't need to be sure of Gombala dinner, then your moba Pantangi Rimbati. To association because in Divado, she Savare. She said, Dubaba to top and said, Duba said, Gaba top in Yomo, but she's up on and Deva Shadow did. Said, Gaba top said it. She heard them.
Good evening. We've been looking at that the root cause of all our suffering, the reason why we remain bound in the suffering realms of samsara, is our afflicted minds. With these, with those being the primary cause, rather not, and they have as their root cause the ignorance of true grasping. Having recognized the root cause of all our suffering, one then will seek out the direct antidote. Namely, the wisdom realizing emptiness. And what is emptiness? What is this emptiness that one needs to develop a wisdom that realizes? Well, that has been presented in our text, The Key to the Middle Way, in quite some detail. This needs to be meditated on repeatedly over a sustained period. And thereafter, or along with that rather, one also needs to be cultivating bodhicitta. And when one generates bodhicitta, uncontrived bodhicitta in one's continuum, with whatever level of realization of emptiness one has, one then attains the Mahayana path of accumulation. So the entry point into the Mahayana path of accumulation is the generation of uncontrived bodhicitta. Throughout the path of accumulation, one accumulates vast stores of merit as well as meditates on emptiness. When one comes to realize emptiness with a union of calm abiding and meditative insight, in that moment, this realizing consciousness is now the path of preparation. On the path of preparation, one continues to accumulate vast stores of merit as well as meditating on emptiness. And when the consciousness comes to realize emptiness directly, in that moment that consciousness becomes the path of seeing. Not only does it become the path of seeing, it also is the antidote. Now, the wisdom directly realizing emptiness is the antidote, eliminating the acquired afflictions. Thereafter, one continues throughout the bodhisattva grounds, and when one comes to the attainment of the 8th bodhisattva ground, then one completely abandons the innate afflictions at all levels, together with their seeds. And that is where one attains the point of liberation.
Ngari shebe tenzin gunda so bang begi goktin ngundu jebe gozu ne mada sadun gi negap so jame nibi chosa mada sadun gi negap so 대내가를 시비기스 계신이 마디 로사리데 디가르스로스네 대중군다 방다데 통란남로라 토이 대중군다 방그리에서 셰서와 다 군다 방에 가를 하여서 하마디 대진 군다 하마 가사군 대진 행기디게 방야 하되어와 제사 대진 행기 방에도 간에 고수구래라나 대내 군다 방바 대내 문도 제비 고수니 세데다 마다 세드인시드 사당보 니바 숨바 시방아바 두바 듬바 세데 마다 세드인시오레 제사디 디네가소 가제 잠메스미 소사바레스드 다 마다 세드비 네가소 뇨모바 치리 총숨죠 냠보 제제 사제바 토여도다 뇨모바 차사 사바나 제바 빵바 인자 근데 마다 세드인지 네갑소 네가시 잠메스미 소소바레스 소 가시 잠이 숨나네다 가시 잠이 니비게 소소바레스 안데 가서 디바를 쉬차레데 그저 기신 가르치 디바도 셰바 인제 마다 서진 내가 수 같이 니비 소소바레스 장메비 니비 소소 세데 소소 세 디바도 셰바를 기시데 디바도 로르 와서 디바도 다게 미네 케데 안데 이 디게 교대 가와 다잡샤 제자 denjungundaso pangbe gokden wondu jebe gozubane mada sedunji jangmeni be choso sedi dibal losherwade
So when one attains the path of seeing, this is where one now abandons the acquired afflictions, in particular the acquired ignorance of true grasping. What remains to be abandoned, and is abandoned through the 7 impure grounds of the bodhisattva, are the innate afflictions, in particular innate true grasping. So these are abandoned throughout the 7 impure grounds. When one comes to the attaining the 8th of the 10 grounds, the 8th being the first of the pure grounds, then one has completed the abandonment of the innate afflictions together with their seeds.
마다 사드인시드 사당보 사당보 데라 곰람 사당보다 데네 산이 사당보 통람 사당보다 곰람 사당보세 니용고레 제자 사당보 데라 사당보세 데라 통람도 곰람 니용고레 제스 통람데 사당보로와 데네 곰람세 니용고레 사당보 데라 대산니바도 숨바 시방아버 두버 듬바시 디차상 곰람 짱야 차마다 차고레 제자 사당보 데라 네 사당보 통람세 곰람세 예와 니치고레
We have on page 26 at the third bullet point. When one attains the path of seeing, one attains the first ground, and the first ground continues into the path of meditation as well. So the path of the first ground is on both the path of seeing and the path of meditation. From the first ground onwards, these all remain on the path of meditation. So these 7 impure grounds are all found on the path of meditation, but the very first ground is found not only on the path of meditation, but also on the prior path of seeing.
아다 녀모바 데라 녀모바 한제 데라 꼴 구치고레 충무 징 첨보 숨제 셰 데네 충무 첨보 데레 징 체진 충숨 징 데라 체진 충숨 충무 데라 체진 충숨 제데 데네 꼴 구치고레 제레 녀모바 한제 데라 당보 첨보 징 충무세 여와 숨제 다 첨보 데라 양 첨보다 징다 충무세 여와 숨제 징데라 숨제 충무데라 숨제데 구체고리 녀모바 한제 데라 꼴 구체고레 제레
It's also mentioned last time that the innate afflictions are divided into 3 levels of coarseness to subtlety. The coarseness being the great level of the innate afflictions, then there's the middling level of the innate afflictions, and the subtle level of the innate afflictions. So there are these 3 levels of coarseness of the afflictions, or subtlety, levels of subtlety of afflictions. But each of these have their own subdivisions, divided again into great, middling, and small. So to take as an illustration, the first of the three levels, the great, has the division of the great of the great, the middling of the great, and the small of the great. Then the second level, that of middling, has the division of the great of the middling, the middle of the middling, and the small of the middling, and so forth. Same then with the small level as well. So these represent the innate afflictions being divided into coarser levels, progressing down to subtler levels, making 9 in total.
Adina Shida, the Chimbo de la Rakwa Chimbo de la Chejing Chimbo de Jing Chumo Sum Chedu, Dinani, the Chimbo Rakwa de la Rakwa Chida, Chamos Nichigores. Yeah, outside the Chimbo de la Dangbo de la Chimbo de Jing Chumo Sum Nane, Chimbo de la and the Rakwa Chida, Chimbo, Chimbi Jing, Chimbi Chumo said Nichigor Jing Jade Gasore, Rakwa Chamo Nichigore.
Just to repeat that, the innate afflictions, these have 3 levels, which each themselves contain 3 levels, making 9 in total. The very first level is the great of the great, which itself has 2 levels, a coarser and a subtler. So that would make 10 in total.
Denzin Langi Chimbo de la Rakba de la Yang Rakba di Panyaki Che, Dondalia, Panyaki, Sonam Soche, Sache, Dine Panyaki, Nubarish Leodu, and the Pantu Saris and Beleodu, then the Tombani La Yambashago Regere. The Tangbo Tombani La Yambasha and the Tonlam Yamsha Shere, the Yamsha Barje Malanda Namdra Kayamare, Tonlam Yamsha Shere, that the Nigger Tonlam Yambashane. Denigi Nyamsha is the power of Gom Chekos and Nubak, Gompi to Chinche, Deji Denzin, Tangi Chempo Digi, Rakba Delia, Rakba di Union Chayadu, then Union Chayadu Gomlam Barsimalam Chason Reje, Corsim Barsimana Chason. Then Barsimalam, Golam Barsimalam Dambure, that is Sadambure, Sadambu Gomlam Barsimalam, Niga Sadambure, Sadambu Golam Barsimalam Char. That Denigi Golam Barsimanum Digi Tenzin Tangi Chimbo Rakba di Union Chayadu, that Dene Nibane, Kijinibane, Pat Larian, Jawame Badipa, Bangodu, Saniba said the Shindo, Sanibe Namdrolam said Tosore. She's not Sanibe Namdrolam said Tosore. Dangbo Nyamba Shabadi, Tonil Nyamba Shabadu, Tonlamche. The Nigger Tonlam Yamja Ishi di Mo Gombi to Chinje, Denzel Hange, Chimbu, Rakba di Union Chayadu, Gomlam Barsimalam Reze, Gomlam Barsimalam. Yes, sir. Chuba Dangubagish, my daddy, and your mobile called Gucci Sassana. Go Gunane, Dangbo de la Rakba de la Chimbo de la Rakba and Chamoni Chesson, Dangbo Rakba Bangu Hurwa, that the Rakba de Nimbo Joyala, Dangbo Tonlam Re, Tomba Yambasha Tonlam Rege, Di Tonlam di Ne Rakba Numober, Tangi Rakba de Union Chayadu, Gonam Barsimalam Chavarege, Golam Barsimala Rege. The Bangyomar, that Nimbo Kirwa, Gomlam Barsimalam, the Nimborwa, Bangurwa, Union Barsimalam Kiavare. When Barsimalam the child, the Gomlam Barsimalam, this Dangbu Gomlam Barsimalam said the Rege.
So when the path of seeing is attained, this coarser level of the great. So we have the 9 levels, of which the first level, the great of the great, has 2, a coarse and a subtle. The coarse level, this is abandoned by the meditative equipoise, or it has as its antidote rather, the meditative equipoise of the path of seeing. As the strength of the meditation increases, the liberated path of the path of meditation is achieved. So last week we spoke about unobstructed paths and liberated paths as well. So when the liberated path or the path of meditation is achieved, then that the coarse level the coarse level of the great, so that 10th level has been abandoned, and now one attains the second ground with this liberated path.
di bangiru dambo da kumlam barche malam di sa dambo kumlam barche malam reje sa dambo kumlam barche sarwada jesa dini barche malam digi nyembo ngoni di tinzel hangi chimbe chimbo rakba de ngonje rwa di bangyo de garcha gresene sa dambo kumlam na kasa sanyibe namdro lam se thubo reje sanyibe namdro kumlam namdro lam se thubo reje.
So the liberated path, or the path of meditation, is now where one is on the second ground. The first ground has been already attained and achieved, and now with the attainment of the path of meditation, one moves into the second ground.
Chizan sanyi be gomlam thomyo de tangbo namdro lam che so re. Chizan sa tangbo gomlam barche malam che. Dini bar thongla nyamja shi de che sanyi be gom namdro lam che. Chizan gomlam na di sum nyamja thunju nyamja jigle ya nam bar nyamja shi sum ki go rimba sum dang. Nyamja jigle nyamja midawa sum ki go rimba midawa sum ki go wa tangbo di thonglam barche thonglam di nyamja shi barche malam ma namla kaya ma tongba nyamba sha ba nyamja shi che. 대 누바 처셔도 되는 바시 말람 차서래 디 누바 처체는 녀모보 문이데 녀보지 녀모바데 방요도 남조람사차 제자디 남조람사 디나데 숨 림바 숨나네 통람데당 곰람 바시 말람니데 사당보래제 데네 곰람 남조람사 끼여도 산이바시래제 사당보 데라 통람 냠자이시에 당 공람 발체말람 니보데 사당보래 해지고니 니도아 사당보 데라 통람 남조람 통람 냠자이시에 당 공람 냠자이 가서래 가서 공람 냠자이시 니도아 디니가 사당보래 해지 디니데 데네 남조람도 토병도 산이바시네 두고래제.
So say this again to make sure to say it now a little clearer than the translator got it the first time. So when one in this single meditative equipoise, with attainment of the path of seeing, in one meditative equipoise, in other words, a single meditation session, there are these three sections. The first is with the attainment of the path of seeing. One has a meditative equipoise, and it is the first ground. Thereafter comes the second of these three levels, all within one meditation. The unobstructed path is achieved, and that is still the first ground. Thereafter, the liberated path is achieved, and that is the second ground.
당보 통람 냠제시 데네 사단베 곰람 바셰마나 데네 산이베 남조람 세디 냠제시 숨 데네야 두신 냠자리 녀시 미저 숨숨숨숨 냠는 두고 얼다더니야 냠자 튠치 나라 냠제시 미저 숨기고래 데네 야다 예니바 상제 고방마도 봐도 냠제시 숨숨기고래제 대시 통람로 졸람 냠제시 통람 바셰만람 통람 남졸람 숨제서 디나신 다데데라 통람 냠제시제 데네 곰람 바셰만람제 사나베 곰람 바셰만라제 데네 산이베 남졸람 냠제 숨기기도 어디 디나신다 데네야 두시네 차산지고 숨숨기도 거래.
And this progression of a meditative equipoise, having these three divisions, is how the meditator continues their progression throughout the attainment of the varying grounds. So repeating what was said to do with the attainment of the path of seeing. One enters into the path of seeing with a meditative equipoise, and that would be the first ground. Then as this meditative equipoise continues, that consciousness becomes the unobstructed path, which is the and the first ground, still on the first ground, and then it becomes a liberated path, and that now is the second ground. So a single meditative equipoise with these three divisions. And as the meditator or the yogin continues their development of their realization of emptiness, powered by the accumulation of merit, and when the meditation comes, that is a meditative equipoise of a new ground, then that meditative equipoise has these three divisions.
Sa dangbo tonglam tobyo dangbo barshi malam ji gorwa. Barshi malam ji yende tonglam sa dangbo togo barshi tonglam tobyo gorwa. Da sa dangbo. Sanyiba ji yende sanyiba tobyo de dangbo khar ji gorasne namjolam ji gore. Barshi malam ji go ma namjolam ji gore. Jesa sa dangbo komlam barshi malam se de sa dangbo rwa. Jesa sanyiba tobyo de sanyibe namjolam tobyo togo doa. Jesa sa dangbo tobyo de dangbo khar ji gere barshi malam ji gere je. Sanyiba ya sanyiba tobyo dangbo namjolam kigore sasumba tobyo dangbo namjolam kigore din chigbare den ya gomlam de ro da sa dangbo le samna godang banshe na de gomlam ma do thonglam sasare da jesa de ya gomlam kigore de ne sa dangbo sanyiba sumba shiba ngaba duba dumba jeba kuba juba se joro wa jesa sa dangbo tobyo de san dangbo tobyo de nam barshe malam kigore je sanyiba ya dangbo de gargi wasne namjolam ki war namjolam chi kewa da sanyiba thoba dene san sumba thobde dangbo namjolam ki gore sa shiba de dangbo namjolam ki gore chisa da sa dangbo la dangbo bashi malam ki di ji namjolam ki gore je dene ya sa sumba niba ne ya na dangbo namjolam ki gore je sanyibe ka so thobyo de dangbo namjolam chi ki gore sa sumba dangbo thobyo de namjolam chi ki gore sa shiba dangbo de namjolam chi ki gore du se kyang ya des.
So to repeat then, to do with the attainment of path of seeing, and then to progress it into the next the next grounds, achieve the path of seeing. So in this meditative equipoise, where the yogin progresses from the path of preparation to the path of seeing, in that meditative equipoise, they attain the first ground. They then attain in this one meditative equipoise, the second part, the unobstructed path of the first ground, which is on the path of seeing. Then, in this meditation, they also attain a liberated path of the second ground, which is now on the path of meditation. When then the meditation is concluded, and then later, at a further point, when the accumulation of merit and wisdom is strong enough, then they enter into a meditative equipoise again, and they will now go through that same sequence of entering into a meditative equipoise on the path of seeing. Now it would be on the second ground, and they would attain an unobstructed path of the second ground, and then a liberated path of the third ground. So the sequence is the same. They will attain, now to do with the second meditative equipoise, they will achieve on the path of meditation a meditative equipoise of the second ground, and then thereafter, the second part, the unobstructed path of the second ground, and then the liberated path of the third ground. And those would be the three segments of that one meditative equipoise, and so forth into the fourth ground.
So can I just clarify something there? We seem to be going from the path of seeing to the path of meditation backwards there. Or is this all? So you've got the first ground, which the first part of the first ground is on the path of seeing, and then within the same meditation, you go into the second part of the first ground, and then you said you go into the path of meditation.
Okay, so confirm that within that this one meditative equipoise, where the path of seeing is, that one progresses through both the coarse and subtle levels of the path of seeing, of the first ground, and then into the second ground, which is the path of meditation, all in the one meditative equipoise. Yeah, that was the question. So in the one meditative equipoise, one progresses from the path of seeing to the path of meditation, which means one would progress through both of the levels of the first ground into the level of the second ground as well, in that one meditative equipoise.
Wow.
No, that's as I understood your question, which I will then confirm with Ganla. Okay?
Sanyibe Kishima, Tonlam Ladu Sadangburwa. Tonlam Ki Yodu Kala Barche Malam Sen Namdra, Tonlam Barche Malam, Tonlam Namdra Lamda Urwa. Chesanchi to Tonlam Dangbon Kikendi Barche, Tonlam Barche Malarwa, Dijila Tonlam Namdra Larwa. Tonlam Barche Malam Majinela Karchevers and Jolam di Tomba in Lanyaba Shawarwa. Jolam. Chesan Jolam di Tomba in Lanyaba Shane. Nyamcha de Nuba Church de Garchasa, Tonam Barshimolam Chego Regere. Danyamja Nido Soa. Dangbo de Jolam Barshimola, because Jolam Ro Barshimola Maya, Tomba in Yambashi, Jolam Chego, Jolam Reg. Then you Jolam de Yambarshan and O Gombe the Chino de Garchasa, Cheshan Tonam Barshimolam Chego Regere. Tonam Barshimolam Nido Soa, that turn Barshim Malam D. Jela Cardios on Tolam Namdrolam Siki. This one got Dangbo Nambarshim Malanda Namdrolam into Tolamre. Tini Dangbo Yamjashi to Jolamre. Reva. They come them Shini Rwada, they Tolam Rwada, they Tolam Barshim Yomare. Dangbo de Jolamre, Niba Niga Tolamre. Then Tolam to Jedoble Shangorda. The Jetoption Saniba Yomarzi, Tolam Reward, Tolam La Sadambo Mado Yomare, Sadambo Jibure, Tolam La Sadan Tolam, Son Tolam Barshemona, Tola Namdolam now, Dini Sadambore. Dambo Dela Nyamja Sumdua, Dambo Jolamche, Tolam Barshemalamche, Tola Namdolamche, Nyamja Sutunjigla, Nyamja Tunjila, Midawa Nyamja Sumjigduache, Disarwada. Then Namdolam Dijela Karchigas and Jetoblu Sushingore, Tolam Redia, Tolam Yinaka Jetoblashan, then a church, Sonam you saw side, Sonam you saw side, Jetoblashin Goreje. The Tolam Reje, there's just a Tolam Re. Takarishigis in a Dizelangi, Chimbo de la Chara Nishin, Rapa de Payagi, that Bang Tupsaris and Sonam you saw side with Jela, and then Dombain and Yambashagore, Ejere. Tia Tolam Re. The nigger Tolam to Dombain and Yambashani, Ngo, Gompi to Chinde, Dizelangi, Chimbo Rapa, Chara Nishin, Rapa Digi, Munin Chang, Gomlam Barshemanum Chaba, Eje. Gomlam Barsemalam. Gomlam Barsemalam de Sadambure. Sadambu Gomlam Barsemalare. Dini Yamjashi the Tolam Yamjashi, Niga Sadambure, Chicomlamre, Chic Tolamre, Chicomlamre, Daddy. Gomlam Rege, Sadambure, Gomlam Barsemalare, Sadambure Ege. Dini Tolam Yamjashi the Ege, that Dela Tolam Chino Gomlam Nidua. Niga Sadambore Besene, Sadambo Nibagaras, Niga Sadambore Ege. Lam Tolam no Gomlam Garesene, Dangbo de Tolam de Barshemalan de Gomre Ege. Did it so. That Barshemalan di Jela Karkis and the Namdolam Tigris. Di Namdolam said, Saniba Ege, Sanibo Gomlam Namdolam Ege. On disum Nyamcha Tunchilia, Disum Kigo Ege. Sadakbola Rakba the Tamaki Shigo Mare. Sadambo Gomlam Seadan, Tolam Sead Kishima, the Rakba the Tamaki Shigo Mare. Panja Yomo de la Chara Kishigore, Panja Yomo de la Charamado, Lam Corolla Chara Kishigo Mai, Chara Yore Yomaras and Chara Yore, Ina Kishigo, Chara Kishigo Mare, Chara Yore Yomaras and Chara to Yoruba.
Before I come to Geshe's answer, thank you for asking the question. This should be clearer. I don't want to say it will be clearer, but it should be clearer. The yogin, who's on the fourth level of the path of preparation, enters meditative equipoise. And this is the meditative equipoise where they come to realize emptiness directly, and they attain the path of seeing. When they attain the path of seeing, it's a meditative equipoise, first part. So Genla was here dividing it. The first part of this meditative equipoise was path of preparation. The second part of this meditative equipoise is the unobstructed path of the first ground, which is on the path of seeing. And thereafter, the third part of this meditative equipoise is the liberated path of the first ground, still on the path of seeing. So I'll repeat it again. In the meditative equipoise, where the yogin progresses from the path of preparation to the path of seeing, the meditative equipoise has three parts. The first part is the meditative equipoise of the path of preparation. The second part is the unobstructed path of the first ground on the path of seeing. The third part is the liberated path of the first ground on the path of seeing. Okay, so then subsequent attainment on the path of seeing. Then later, when the accumulation of merit is strong enough, then they enter into the meditative equipoise of the path of seeing. And in this meditative equipoise, being a meditative equipoise, it has three parts. And the three parts here, meditative equipoise of the path of seeing, unobstructed path of the first ground of the path of meditation. So now we're on the path of meditation, still first ground. Then the liberated path of the second ground. So what we see in the meditative equipoises, so that was Geshe's commentary. So just to repeat part of it. In the meditative equipoise, there are three parts. One is the meditative equipoise of whatever the path is. Then it's followed by the second part is the unobstructed path of that particular ground, and then the liberated path of the next ground, with the exception of the very first one, because there's only on the first ground. So each meditative equipoise has a meditative equipoise, an unobstructed path, and a liberated path. Okay. So the second meditative equipoise, where one progresses from the path of seeing to the path of meditation, one enters into meditative equipoise of the path of seeing, then unobstructed path, now on the path of meditation. But that's still concluding the first ground. Then going into the liberated path of the second ground. Do you want me to repeat it all? Because it is quite a lot. Shall I repeat it all?
No, I've got that. Yeah. Then what happens?
Sure.
I didn't mind banged dread. No more did you band it.
One continues abandoning along, one continues along abandoning further.
I didn't mind thinking loud, I just sang loud. The Lama does he name love you already. He love you already. Didn't you love him to go and get a watch? That is he goes in Sunny bin Namdrum top Sarsonda. That Dagachi was in that Jetubla Shingorita. Sunny by the Jetubla Shan, the son of your source I go that. Jekun Chego Puya, Jimba Dawala, son of your source, the Sunny by the Sunny be Jetubi Shesi or. Nandine Sosa Sane, and the Garichigorasene, that is in Yomoba, Chimbu Chimbo de la Rakwa de la Tara Nichuin and the Chamotida, Rakwa Pansaravada, that Chamo de Panyag Nuba told you, Dene, not Tombani Yamba Shagore, Dia Sanibu Gomlam Lady, Din Barshemala Namdola Gaya Mare, Tombani Yamba Shagore, Deniki Tombani Yamba Shane, Nyamcha di Ya Nuba Cher Chinje, and 대시 녀모 쳔베 다 차라 이치나네 참어디 원인 제어도 되네 가르쳐 오라시네 발시 말람레디 디야 산이버레 산이비 고물람 발시 말람레 데라 발시 말람 가야 마인게 산이비 냠샤 시직제 디네 산이비 고물람 발시 말람제 다 산이비 고물람 발시 말라 뉴바야 cher친데 디네 데지 라파디 가서 라파데라 차라니 주치베 참어디 파 빵요도 사순베 남조람세 토바레제 지사다 델레야 당보델레가도 산이베 냠샤시 바시몰람 가야마인게 냠샤시 직제 데네 산이베기 안네 바시몰람 직제 Dene sa sumbige namdrolam chikche disum nyomde ki woreche ado. Ji rakwa chenpo derwa de deji chenpo de la chara chenpo de la chenpo de jingyi ne chenpo de la chara ni cherwa rakwa de pang sarwa sa nipa to de pang sarwa da di chamo de chawa derwa da. Rakwa de sanyibi namdolam tobe rakwa de pang sarwa. Da gar paya la yoro jin chimbi de la chamodi chimbi ge chamodi paya la de ro. Da chimbi chamodi paya ge donda la sanyibi ko tongpa ni la nyambar shabe nyamsha shi re di sanyibi nyamsha shi re ba chim namdola ga ya mare je. Dine ge nyamsha shi ngo gombe de chinje ne chamodi ngoni cha de sanyibi ko mlam ba chim lam re je. Da digi pa pang de ane ga so sa sunbe namdolam re je adu sre. 디 사순베 남존람 토에도 되지 체rin 충숨나네 첨보들라 첨보의 징 충숨진네다 첨보의 방고르다.
For the next the sequence for each meditative equipoise as one progresses through the grounds is the same as been said. So the next progression will be, or let's say, where the yogin finished, is they attained a meditative equipoise or the path of seeing again. So they're already an Arya being, right? In the first meditative equipoise, they progressed from the path of preparation to the path of seeing. The second meditative equipoise, they entered into it, entered into the meditative equipoise, now on the path of seeing, and they abandoned the rough of the great, that first level, and there they attain they're on a meditative equipoise of the path of seeing, first level, second level, unobstructed path of the path of meditation, and it's the first ground, and they progress in that same equipoise to the third level, the liberated path of the second ground. Meditation concludes. They enter into subsequent attainment of the path of meditation now. So they're on the path of meditation, accumulating merit, and when they have accumulated sufficient merit so that their meditation on emptiness has now sufficient strength to be a meditative equipoise, it will have these same three divisions. The first being the meditative equipoise or the path of meditation, where the subtle level of the great is now being abandoned, whereas in the previous meditative equipoise, the rough level or the coarse level of the great was abandoned. Now the subtle level of the great is being abandoned. And therefore the great of the great is now about to be completely abandoned, and it is with the second level in this meditative equipoise, an unobstructed path of the second ground of the path of meditation. And then the third part of this meditative equipoise is a liberated path of the third ground. So what Genla has said here is the same sequence as in, this is the third meditative equipoise, and the sequence is always the same. Meditative equipoise is entered, and then there's an unobstructed path and a liberated path. Those are the three divisions within each meditative equipoise. As the meditator progresses, meditative equipoise to meditative equipoise, they will be labeled differently as they're progressing through the grounds, and they are abandoning different coarseness or subtleness, whatever, of the afflictions. So that divisions will change, but the sequence within each meditation, or the three divisions of each meditative equipoise will be the same. So again, to repeat the third meditative equipoise, what Kenna just mentioned, the yogin has now completed in the previous meditated equipoise, coming to the point of the liberated path of the second ground, or the path of meditation. So later, when they enter meditative equipoise again, they will start with the meditative equipoise of the path of meditation, because that's where they are, abandoning the next level of subtleness of afflictions, the great of innate afflictions, the great of the great, or the subtle level of the great of the great. And then the second part of the three of this meditative equipoise is an unobstructed path of the path of meditation, of the second ground, or the unobstructed path of the second ground of the path of meditation. Then they go to the liberated path of the third ground. So this sequence runs again. So I'll say it again because I have it written down, so it's very easy for me I can just see it, right? But if you're hearing it without it written, it's a little more difficult.
So can I just ask you, by grounds, are we talking about the grounds?
The 10 grounds, the 10 bhumis, yeah. So the 10 bhumis, on the 10 bhumis, there are abandonment of 10 coarseness to 10 levels of subtlety of the afflictions. So when again, let's talking about the great of the great and the middling of the great, this is referring to the level of subtlety of innate affliction that's being abandoned on each ground. Then how those are abandoned is in relation to the meditative equipoise, the unobstructed path, and the liberated path. Those three parts of each meditative equipoise. So for me it's always complicated because it's all this language. But the meditative equipoise, which is where the progression, there'll be many meditations on emptiness, but called the meditative equipoise, it's where something big is happening. So then initially in the meditative equipoise, one moves path from the path of preparation to the path of seeing, and the next one from the path of seeing to the path of meditation. Thereafter one stays on the path of meditation continuously until Buddhahood. So that's the first part of these three levels within the meditative equipoise, stating what path one is on and what of these 10 levels of subtlety of the affliction is being abandoned. So that's the first level. The second is the unobstructed path of the same ground one concluded, and now with a liberated path, now here with an unobstructed path, that same ground, from the previous meditative equipoise to this meditative equipoise. Then the third part of this meditative equipoise is a liberated path of a new ground. So all that said, I'll repeat again what Genla said as to this next level of meditation, which will be the same for all of them. Having gone through subsequent attainment, accumulating vast stores of merit on the path of accumulation, when sufficient merit has been accumulated so as to power the meditation to be a meditation on emptiness, to be a meditative equipoise, it is again a meditative equipoise on the path of meditation. Now, being a meditative equipoise, the next level of the degrees of subtlety of the afflictions are abandoned. In this case, the great of the great, the subtle level of the great are abandoned. That's the first part of this meditative equipoise. The second of the three is the unobstructed path, or the path of meditation. Rephrase that, the unobstructed path of the second ground of the path of meditation. So this is where we're starting, second ground. The previous meditated equipoise we concluded on the second ground. Now we come to the third part of this meditative equipoise, the liberated path, but of the next ground, the third ground.
Chikliya, Tun Sumsum, Yamcha Bitorum, Sumsumsaki, Bangrim Dushine, that Rotan Chibore, or Dushan Tugore, United Durs Conyo, me, Toyame, Chembe, Jason Waratua, and another Momban, Cheli, Andugi, Yama de Rimoro, Chitishene, and the Niton to see which Chagre, these Jama Momban, chicken, Dusuchilia, the equal Pachik Seshi chicken.
So I understand this is quite a lot to hear. What is a lot easier if you have a chart before you with all this laid out, and then it's quite clear. Without the chart, just hearing it, then it's quite a lot to take in. But nevertheless, this sequence just continues. It sounds like it's quite easy, but one just continues through this sequence with each subsequent meditative equipoise, with having these three parts, and in this way one abandons the varying degrees of subtlety of the innate afflictions, progressing through the path of meditation, through the varying grounds, the various grounds or bhumis.
Gashin Jamigi Cho Sumsa was a Cho Dangbodi, Bendigo, Chojo Nekapso Sachi, Satangbo Toyu, Gashin Dangbu, Cho Sawache. Then Satangbonia, Satumban Masache, Sakeva Toyu, and the Baradelia, Satumbi Nekasuda, Gashin Jami, Nibigi Cho Sache, Satumba Tovarege, Sakeva Tovarege. That Denia, Jedda Sanji Padella, Gashin Jamigi, Jigmada Salhaya Maroda. Chizan, Denia, Tapa Sasumbi, Kapsu, Shiji Jiba. 点进巴下丹结巴，巴下丹第一辈年安连参谋呢，人与朋友各族的战略准备个错说吧做吧那，就啥的，在这边那个说，这结巴古巴举报什么的，大把啥什么事过嘞？第一那个说的，点进巴下丹这边年不切切，那朋友的那第一个说那个先战略准备错啥吧嘞？第二那个就是呢。 대기 장매별 숨요 초조바나 균기 릭타다 덴도 방대 고된 추유고 톱대 최 롱고 줄고 숨 구숨 뒤지도 오늘 교육이 현재 누바 탈진배 산요고 바 토바 이노 사실 이제 나도 제마디 와죠 다들
Just before coming to Genla's commentary, the chart Genla referred to, Andy will distribute it tomorrow. So the chart exists, and I'll if that assumes okay. Then just to continue. So now looking at the text, so starting starting on page 20. Can I ask, did you say something?
I've got a chart as well.
Mm-hmm.
Also in English.
And Genla doesn't have one, but yours will be in English, right? Yeah. Do you want to send it to Andy? You'll print it off? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Kong Okay. Thank you. So returning to the text, we're going to read from the third bullet point to the end of this section. Whilst abiding on the 7 impure grounds, the second accumulation of merit and wisdom is amassed over a second countless great eon. So this process of progressing through the 7 impure grounds is the same as been mentioned here, and the process continues thereafter in the fourth bullet point. Whilst abiding on the 3 pure grounds, sequentially the abandonment of obscurations to omniscience, which are the imprints of true grasping, and the subtle, spontaneous, adverse tendencies produced by them, is begun. So this then is the yogin continues now through the 3 pure grounds, 8, 9, and 10, and the process is as described before. But here, now the imprints are abandoned. Because when one completes the 7 impure grounds, there one abandons the innate afflictions together with their seeds, and over the 3 pure grounds, merely the imprints or the stains of the innate afflictions are what is abandoned. And then the final bullet point, when the third accumulation of merit and wisdom over a countless great eon is completed, a dharmakaya, which is a true cessation, and the state of having entirely abandoned all types of defects is attained. The 3 bodies, namely the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and the Manakaya, are simultaneously manifested, and the state of Buddhahood with perfected wisdom, love, and power is attained. And just to say, if you prefer the English names to the Sanskrit names for the bodies of the Buddha, they on the chart over the page.
직제 되는 롱고 주고 있으면 디니 구슨 버디 뒤직을 두고 그래서 마다 당보 주고도 되는 롱고도 되는 주고도 림바신 토바레베스 말에 뒤직라 아니 주고다 아니 롱고도 주고 숨과 뒤직을 토바레 제래 그래서 구숨 롱 구숨 직절도 온도 제세 뒤직라 온도 제바레스 그래서 되니게 제여도다 견제뉴바 탈신바다 상유고바 토바레스
Just reading this final bullet point again, the fifth bullet point again. When the third accumulation of merit and wisdom over a countless great eon is completed, a Dharmakaya, which is a true cessation, and the state of having entirely abandoned all types of defects is attained. The abandonment of all types of defects here refers to having abandoned the stains or the imprints of the afflictions, because the seeds of the afflictions have already been abandoned with the attainment of the 8th ground. Now, with the conclusion of the 10th ground of a bodhisattva, there the stains of the afflictions are entirely abandoned, and in that moment where the stains or the defects are entirely abandoned, then the consciousness becomes that of the Dharmakaya. So here the text just states the Dharmakaya, but the Dharmakaya or the truth body has two divisions, the nature truth body and the wisdom truth body. And then a second point to make, so the first point was that the Dharmakaya, there are actually two divisions, the nature truth body and the wisdom truth body. Then thereafter, the other bodies, the form body with its Rupakaya, with its two divisions of Sambhogakaya and the Manakaya, these are all attained in the same instant. So whether one divides the bodies of a Buddha into 2 or 3 or 4, they are all simultaneously attained. So here one shouldn't think that there is a sequence, because how it is expressed is that when the stains of the afflictions, of the innate afflictions are abandoned, the Dharmakaya is achieved. But one shouldn't think that, and thereafter, the Rupakaya or the form body is achieved. Rather, all the bodies of the Buddha are achieved together, simultaneously, in the same instant. This section then presents entirely the stages that a practitioner goes through in terms of the stages of mental development to enter the paths of a bodhisattva. And having attained the paths of this bodhisattva, the paths and later grounds that they will progress along in order to achieve their desired goal of becoming a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Along the progression of these paths and later the grounds, they develop the continuum, this path, perfecting it ever further until it is completely perfected, and that's expressed as attaining the state of a Buddha.
다 되네 안데 나가 루리아 산지길 냠랭이 림바체 산요고 토기 림바로 되는 마더듯이 송도와 다 되는 디레 양 매중 자심 양다베 다위 시규 레버 장신 시르다 델리아 저게 장주 매중스 담보 매중곰 매중 기베되네 안 장주샘곰 잠니지곰 장주샘게 장주샘레바 류장 되네 다양다베 따와 동반이 또베 로장 되네게 장주샘다 매중곰 장주샘다 니제다 장주샘라서 곰바데 되네 동유도베 시라 곰바 되네게 도스는 냠는 레버 장세도 로리아 냠는 진디네게 냠는 마소 깔아가좀 제바시고 그래 레버 장신 되네 수남당 로디기 규소 레버 창비 가와다 덴바 시기 시르데네게 수남미 소다 이시 소 수남미 소 잠니제 장주샘 진발로서 80주기 냠는 아주 되려는 대시시에 냠는 이름바 되네게 냠는사 되네 안에 로디에서 동반 이시 소 동반이 두비 셰랍티게 곰제 되네게 규야고 사서위 수남미 차비게 되네게다 수남미 야고 사디바이나 가와다 덴바 하서거든 규소 레버를 참여 가와다 덴바 대비 장신 시규는 남로서 로로와 제가 곰 장슈 셈곰 동유곰 로곰 장슈 셈고 시규세를 로곰 쓰라 셰바스
The Mahayana has two subdivisions. So we've looked at the one of the sutra divisions. So this training that has been presented here is the the training of a practitioner of sutra of the Mahayana, or the presentation of the paths and grounds of the sutra paths and grounds of the Mahayana. Mahayana also, though, in addition to having its division of the sutra, has the division of tantra. So this we have then with the next two bullet points, the path of secret mantra. Through having trained one's mental continuum well by means of definite emergence, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, and in addition have the fortune of having completed well the causal collections of both merit and wisdom. So again, I read up to there. The causal collections of both merit, these we would have heard many times before and were referred to above. The perfections, the practices of a bodhisattva that are to be perfected, of generosity, ethical restraint, and patience. And then the perfection of wisdom refers to the accumulation of wisdom. So this then is the meaning of the two causal collections of both merit and wisdom.
Ngejung Makena, Janshusem Gitwea, Jam Niji Gitwea, Marachisan, Niju Dambo, Ngejung Samdang Nejukom, Dene Jam Nijikom, Dene Janshusem Com, Dene Tony Jebachi, Tony to Betawa Com, Chetinigi, the Dene Combash Kuguri, Injimejeda, Marinam Jabala, Dambo, Jam Nijeta, Janshusem, Tony to Piggy, Lola, Lobsang washing Jebash Kuguri, Gulia Parchang, Lojan, Yabo Chevash Kuguri, Madigi, Nesudike. 조타한테 야구 마시는 바이나 디네가 냠는 제 용구 말에 지상가 냠는 제 발라 네 담부 내중 삼다야다 디네는 자주심 삼다 디네 동유도에 따와딜이야 네 지고 로려야 장도르지는 마소나 다니 야구 장어 장어지고 그래 해야지.
What His Holiness is presenting here in these first few lines is the foundation to be able to successfully practice secret mantra, which is that one has to train one's mind in the three: definite emergence, bodhicitta, and correct view. Without first generating definite emergence, bodhicitta cannot be attained. So therefore, one has to train in definite emergence, so as to have the foundation to generate bodhicitta. And one also, in addition to definite emergence and bodhicitta, must cultivate the correct view, the wisdom realizing emptiness. These three are the foundation for a successful practice of Tantra, and practitioners need to be their minds need to be well trained in definite emergence, bodhicitta, and the correct view.
지사다 쇠남다 가서 로리교 규소 렉바라 창화시대 지사다 쇠남 잠니제다 안 로리세데 장슈 동이도 베셔랍디게 냠내 야고 제 중원이나 당가 냠내 제발라 귤마소나 야고 청거레 디저 귤마소나 야고 차디어레스 창화스네 규소 소 렉바라 창화스 렉바 창요레스 지사다 동이도 베다고 검나 장슈 셈 검메나 nga nyamlen jibelu gyuji changyo ma le so ro jisa da jangju sem ne ni ji kom tong yu du bi gi lo le pa nyamlen je de lia ba jang ba yin na jang de ba na de nga nyamlen je lu gyu lu ma so na chang de yo le che de da de ne ka wa de den ba si de ni gi jam ni je de jangju tong yu du bi she ro nyamlen je ba na nga nyamlen je le de ne yu du de ba me na de ne yung ma ro jisa de ne sa ka wa de den ba si de nga nyamlen je le de ba yo ba nga lia yi che da Dönyer yoba di nyamne döba yoba asiwore dini gi yoba döba yoba kansa asiwore kawa dan tembe.
Looking at the third line, have the fortune of having completed well the causal collections of both merit and wisdom. This term fortune, we know from other contexts as a precious human rebirth. Here, fortune is referring to having the good fortune of having accumulated vast stores of merit through practices such as love and compassion, as well as the accumulation of merit through having cultivated the wisdom realizing emptiness. So these need to be well established within one's continuum. And these being well established in one's continuum is the boundary or the entry point to being able to practice Tantra. Moreover, one must have the fortune of the strong aspiration to practice Tantra. Should the strong aspiration to practice Tantra be missing, but having the foundation of accumulation, there's a vast accumulation of merit and wisdom, and the definite emergence, bodhicitta, and the wisdom realizing emptiness being well settled in one's mind, that one will still not be ready to engage in the practice of Tantra. One also requires having a strong aspiration, a strong desire to do so.
Dolam latine and Yamlin Chebale, and Ngalam latine Yamlin Chebaina, Yamlin Chebana, Sanyo Toya, Sanyo Toya, Tanu, yes, Yoga top to Res, Yoga top to Res. Cesade, Nagin, Sangage, Yamlin Chebale, then Sanyo Toya, Tablam Yamlin Rimbadilla, Nulam Sio, Nulam, then Nulam Sio. Cesade Nigi, Dansachi, Kawatima, Nulam said. Yulam sanga yu sumje lam la tene drena sajida sanga ya sanjo ko ma thoya de ya yu lam doi lam la tene de tanyo jo top thuya gi nga gi lam nga gi nyamlen che de res de la ya ane nga gi nyamlen che de le gyide le ma so ne gyide shi yor wa ja gyu ju gyu na ju la me gyu se de gyide shi yung ko res je san gyide shi.
Therefore, to understand a person of good fortune in the context of a secret mantra is someone who has is well established in their mind the paths of definite emergence, bodhicitta, and the wisdom realizing emptiness, together with the vast stores of merit and wisdom that these would lead to, as well as having the strong determination or aspiration for the path to engage in the practices of Tantra. Then the text continues. One will progress through relying on any of the three lower tantric paths of the swift paths of secret mantra. So here there's a term that you'll see throughout this brief section mentioned or repeatedly mentioned by His Holiness, and that is terms such as swift or fast, because this emphasizes the key purpose that the practitioner would have in mind when generating the determination to engage in the practices of Tantra, that it is a vastly quicker technique to attain enlightenment than the sutra path. So understanding this, combining with one's determination to become a Buddha, the determination to enter into the practices of Tantra arise within one in a genuine way. The classes of Tantra, or the types of Tantra, are divided into 4. So here, these are in English, the Action Tantra, Performance Tantra, I suppose Yoga Tantra, I don't know English, in English, and Highest Yoga Tantra. Or the Sanskrit, that being Charya, Kriya, Charya, Yoga, and Highest Yoga. I can't say it, that's Anucharya Tantra. Mahayana, Anucharya, something like this. There we go. I'll stay at the English, it's easier for the tongue, Highest Yoga Tantra, and the earlier ones were Action and Performance and Yoga.
Adenegi, Danyamlin Che, Delia, Ajigi, Jagu, Naju, Gudu Sumla, Dene, Yamlin Che, Chidaya, Najulami Gula, Dene, Yamlin Che, Nyungorwa, Deneza, Dade, Gudu Sumbosure, Nulam Sanga, Gudu, Oma Sums, Najulami Gula, Maimbache, Jagu, Naju, Sumbo Della, Dene, so Oma Sumbo Della, Dene, Drena, and Sanjoko Toyalia, Lam Yamlin Chebaina, Kuzu, Jupsuge, Tap Medu Chua. Shila Sonjegi Naju Nurdu Juba, Sokyo Tule, Sanjavare, Sidu, Chizan, Gudu Omosmi Lamla Tene, Nyamlin Chebana, and Gariosene, Delia, and Do Nyamlin Chebale, and Delia, Nyamlin Chebana, Sukutu, Sanjo Kutu, Tablamdi, and the Meduchua, Saba Yores, Saba Yores, and the Tombani Lambi, Shila Sonredi, Nuares, Sabares, or Chizadineza, di Tula Dene, Sanjawar, Nuares, Chizada, Delu let Sanjawatang, Gudio Mosum Yamlinjeva Sanjawani, Sunyel Sanji, Getugure Labna, Gudio Mosum Yamlinjeva Latina, Sanjako, one year, Totugure, Echem. Totubi Gumsan Gare Lamna, the Yamlinjig Lam Yirimbadi, Lam Sabares, Chizad Sabadi. Nyamne cheba ne nyele culturas chisnati sablujena gudu omosumi lam nyamle rimba de sabadang dela tene ane doyulu ne shebik lam nyamle rimba de tos rakwaro chagore ejere chisnati saba inza nyele sanji tugures edires nyuwa imbikimzin direjere.
We see in the sentence it refers to the 3 lower tantras. So there are 4 classes of tantra. And the first 3 are lower to the fourth. The fourth being highest yoga tantra. The first 3 being that of action, performance, and yoga. So those are the 3 lower tantras. Then the text continues. Using the power of the excellent skillful method for accomplishing a rupakaya, and through the quick accomplishment of the yoga of calm abiding and meditative insight and so forth, enlightenment is rapidly attained. So in this final sentence, using the power of the excellent skillful method for accomplishing a rupakaya or form body, and through the quick accomplishment of the yoga of calm abiding meditative insight and so forth, enlightenment is rapidly attained. This here then indicates the key feature of engaging in the practice of Tantra, in that it leads to the rapid attainment, the far faster attainment of enlightenment. And if one asks oneself, a practitioner of the Sutra, Mahayana Sutra paths, and the practitioner of any of the 3 lower tantras, which would achieve enlightenment sooner, one would rephrase that question and say, which will complete the paths of training more quickly? And that would be the practitioner of any of the lower tantras. They would complete the paths of training much more quickly than a practitioner of the Mahayana Sutra paths.
That Najulame Gu. That Dele, that Najulame Gu Dele, and then Yamlin Chaban and Dele Tanya, said, you are to Gorese. Did you almost me a lam Yamlin Jimba Dele, neju lami gi nyamlen chebala tene nyamlen chebaina dile ta nyares sanje ko wa thoya la ta nye tu burese yoga tu burejere.
And furthermore, whilst a practitioner of any of the lower tantras will progress much more rapidly along the paths to the leading to the attainment of enlightenment, or progressing towards enlightenment, than a practitioner of the sutra paths, a practitioner of highest yoga tantra will achieve the desired goal much, much faster than any other kind of practitioner, or a practitioner of the other techniques.
Lama lakbar nanju lami gi lamla sa ngama namki ten lungsim raba dan chawa dan shindu chebi khebare chene eshi shindu chawa ni lam yong ore ge de gombe dongyu do be lo de shindu do chewore gyurne driba pong shindu gyurwegi chechyo yoba ino sa.
The final bullet point in this section. On the superior path of highest yoga tantra, in addition to the former practices to differentiate the coarse, subtle, and extremely subtle wind energies and consciousnesses, an exceptionally subtle mental consciousness itself is generated into the entity of a path consciousness. Through repeatedly cultivating it, the wisdom realizing emptiness becomes extraordinarily powerful, abandoning obscurations particularly quickly. This is a distinctive feature.
Yigi sheba dige sem chawa. Da wong she dige sheba raba che. Yigi sheba dige sem chawa che. Da yigi shebe nane sem shindu chamo labdu zugi jige da zu shi ne gso na zu ninki usu da ni jige mishiba sa ji sem zu chidu yi gapso zu ne shiwe ne gapso shiro chiri da sem chamo chungondu yugo di chi sem chamo sa jin chindu chawe sem dire da nyamlen ni kapla ina dene ga lam gomba le dene ane nyume sem sa chungondu yugo nyume sem sa da nga juge nyume sem sa nyuk sem sa joro wa ajajin chawo shin chawo la wa sin ne di nyamlen jene gomlam nyamlen jene rimbal din le tu ma da li ma le je nyamlen jene gom gebne je mo ba ne le tu ya cha go wa 다 냠네 마제바는 아주 시위인데 갑라 시로지를 이거 우치대 이거래제 제가 되네 셈 차라로 체제 제가 되네게 체여도 되네게 셈 차쇼디게 동반이 또여도 이기 셰바 신도 참모디게 동반이 또여도 되네 동반이 또 별로디 빼마스 사고 쉬우지 또 천지래제 제가 되네게 신도 차와 니 람니 용어를 깨데 곰베 동유 도벌로 신도 돕체와 규르 제대제사 되네게 셈 다데 뉴메 셈세 다디벌드 셰스타로 셈데라 라화 네 다디 제사 되네게 뉴메 셈 참모디게 동반이 도별로 또여도 되네 동유 도별로디 신도네 돕체와래 로 신도 돕체와래 되네자 디기 녀모 방에도 방래라와래 되자 산요고 방 타야 돼. 다 뉴와 녀와 임비 김자로 디송도 디기 동이 두고래세 디기 동이 또요 디 곰제베 깔마도 다데도 요 말와 곰베 값네 곰베 값을 제마 뉴메셈 차쇼 디기 동이 두고래제 디 동이 또 불러디 다 동이 또 불러네 로신도 또 채워드려야지 되네 인상고 산지고 뭐 토요일에 다 니고 교보 톱투에 김정디래서
As we've heard before, we have many differing levels. Our consciousnesses can be divided into a wide variety of levels of coarseness to subtlety. The levels of consciousness that we experience every day, these are coarse. And to look at it slightly differently, we could say the consciousness is related to our senses, and these are coarse, but where the levels of subtler consciousness will be found in our mental consciousnesses. But when we're talking about the extremely subtle levels of consciousness, or in the singular, the extremely subtle level of consciousness, that for almost every being is only briefly experienced at the time of death. For those who are skilled practitioners, this extremely subtle level of consciousness, the fundamental innate consciousness, this can be accessed in practice, in meditation. So for most beings, this will briefly appear at the time of death. But a skilled practitioner can can manifest such or access such a consciousness, or manifest such a consciousness in their meditation. And such a skilled practitioner then can realize emptiness not with a coarser level of consciousness that other skilled yogins would be able to realize emptiness with, but would be able to realize emptiness with this fundamental, innate, exalted wisdom. Because this is such a subtle level of consciousness, the realization of emptiness is itself extremely powerful and able to quickly eradicate the subtle levels of innate afflictions. And this is one key reason why the path of highest yoga tantra is so incredibly quick. It is.
lam nyamling rimbadi nyomo pambala dine lam gyule kye gi dala nga ju da nga ju kidina cha nyamlen chedi da ngejung korwe dunga le targudu sembege samda je ngejung tarbas togu sembege ngejung samda diang ada rangshen rangjibu ma yeshen semje tamje ne korwe dunga de la targudu shen semje de dunga da 자고도 선배게 다 니제 고미야다 데네 자다 semje 탐지게 데네 니 고미야데 가서다 게시쇼데 가서를 배슈 시쇼 디르와다 가서를 고야디 게첨보데 디 안에야도 디 곰발레 데네 다네 코르에 semje 동아 탐지 코와라 조와데 니 제고도 디인장 코와 semje 탐지 코르에 동아 조와라야 판도 제게 다 약쇼데 산제 고바 마톰데 민도 제자데 산제 고바 진에게 토바쇼 sembe게 장쇼 셈 삼다야 안 되는 인자당 아주 semje 탐지게 라시 녀모 빵고 봐서 녀모데 계획이 규디 다 가르쳤네 된신 녀모 바제위 규디다 된신 마릭바데 빵발라 동유 도발 돈마도 빵투 매반자 지자 동이 세데 도후도 sembe 삼다징 아주 동이 세데 된지게 남샤 삼다징의 동이기 안데 아주 계승이 많이 먹고 삼다다 셰도 셰바레 디나신 도신의 동이기 림바사 야 도신의 제바체 삼다디 디 아주 야네야도 아주 글로벌 제화의 계시쇼디 디차되어 봐다. 대시 되게다 좀 미션다 규를 예비게 연대되게 장을 잡셔마도 대디나 신지가서 용야기 된다라 다된 아주 두신의 공고를 왔냐면 제고를 봐다.
What we've looked at tonight, I hope is of some interest, but it's really talking about what is being experienced or has been attained in the continuum of great practitioners. For us, what we should take from tonight, it would be the first sentence of this last section on the path of secret mantra, pointing out what we need to focus on in our training. It's imperative that we start with developing a genuine wish to be free of all the sufferings of samsara, not just the coarse, but the subtle ones, to generate this wish to attain liberation from all the sufferings of samsara. And then also to take that meditation or the arisal of the mind of definite emergence, and apply it to the condition of others, recognizing that they too are no different from me, yearning for freedom from pain and to attain a state of lasting happiness. What they need most is a skilled guide, someone who cares for them deeply, holds them close, and leads them to a state freed of suffering. And that is my responsibility. I need to become that skilled guide. And in this way, we generate bodhicitta. And then, also in the same sets of meditation, include the meditation on emptiness, recognizing that in order to actually gain freedom from the sufferings of samsara, in order to actually become a skilled guide for others, I also need to identify and abandon the root cause of all suffering through developing the direct antidote, the wisdom realizing emptiness. And then this text has presented a wide variety of ways to reflect on emptiness, in particular that of dependent arising. So I encourage you then in your meditation to reflect on dependent arising as well. This is the key point for us to take away. What is presented here is important and interesting to know, but it really applies to what others who have practiced in the way I've just described in the summary, what they have achieved in their continuum. So for us to do so, we need to concentrate on developing definite emergence, bodhicitta, and the wisdom realizing emptiness. So thank you, then we'll conclude here for tonight. Thank you very much.